thank you so much for joining, everyone who's joined on LinkedIn Live or anyone who's logged into our meeting here. Karen, I can see you as well. Hi, Karen. So what we'll do is we'll just introduce ourselves first off, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about the conversation today as well. So for those who don't know me, my name is Matt Smead. I am the owner of Sisu Psychology, and I am one half of Working Well. And the other half is Alethea. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi guys. So yes, Alethea here, Director of Founded Wellness, and yes, other half of Working Well. So Matt and I have worked together kind of as peers in the industry for about 5 years, and have quite complementary businesses. Founded Wellness is more in the sort of holistic wellbeing space, and Matt works in the organisational psychology space. So yeah, it's been a long-term ambition of ours to start to do some work together, and that's what Working Well is. And for those of you watching or that perhaps might watch later or be tuning in through LinkedIn, you might know that we ran the Working Well virtual conference back in April, which was a really wonderful experience, and really great to meet lots of people who joined us for those 3 days of sessions. And we're working and discussing lots of different ideas about how to kind of keep the Working Well story moving forwards. And one of the things we wanted to do is set up a monthly conversation, primarily focused on working and talking with peers from within the workplace wellbeing space, and ideally from those conversations, getting insight, inspiration, examples, best practice from everyone who is facing the same, I guess I want to use the word challenge, but that almost sounds a bit negative, but journey, I suppose, of supporting wellbeing within workplaces. As we know, there's not necessarily a blueprint for doing that. And as service providers, Matt and I are passionate and very enthusiastic about supporting in the best way that we can. But how the best way to learn is really to hear from peers who are on the same journey. So thank you to Liz and Steffi for joining us today.
And so Liz and Steffi, we'll let you introduce yourselves in a second, because that's why we're here, right? But you were two of the delegates on our inaugural Working Well event, so we were pleased to see you there. You took part in all the different sessions, and one of the themes that kind of came up from the event that we ran was how you kind of lead and how you manage well-being initiatives and well-being programs across your organizations. And the two of you very kindly agreed to tell us a little bit more about that. And you just so happen to both work for public sector organizations, right? So there was a bit of a link there, but I think some of the things that we'll be talking about won't just be public sector limited. You know, it won't just be things you can use in any organization, really. But yeah, we'd love to hear more about kind of your stories of how you got to where you got to, and let's just have a chat about your roles, really. So do you want to introduce yourself? Liz, do you want to go first?
Yes. Hi guys, I'm Liz. So I'm fairly new to the wellbeing world. I started in January of this year, but I started studying a business psychology master's in October of last year, and workplace wellbeing was one of the first modules that I covered, and it was home to me. I just loved it, and it was everything I wanted to do. I had my own business at the time. Life was fairly settled. I had plans to move into wellbeing once I finished my part-time master's in 2 years. But I just came across this role at Surrey that was 3 days a week. It just ticked every box for me. And then I met my manager now, Chris. And it was just such a good opportunity that I took the role when I was offered it, and they actually asked me to go full-time, which I now do. So I battle studies and full-time work, which is challenging, but I absolutely love it. I love what I do, love what Surrey are up to. Led by Chris, so I don't lead the wellbeing team. My boss was a mental health nurse and a director of the NHS, so he's really experienced. So we're really lucky to have his background to sort of tap into. So he supports us a lot with a lot of the projects, but there's tons of freedom and autonomy for us to sort of lead on things that we're interested in. But yeah, so far so good.
Perfect, thanks, Liz. And then Steffi, you're on mute, Steffi.
I knew I
That's a
was going to
happy.
do that. That'll happen again. So I'm Steffi. I work at Lancaster City Council. I'm relatively new in council world. I've only been here 2.5 years. I joined in exec support, and a few months later started building wellbeing into my role. My past was working for a students' union for 6.5 years, where wellbeing was talked about every day, all aspects of wellbeing. So when I started at the council, I started asking questions, and it was obvious we had some passionate people and some amazing initiatives, but we just didn't have a central hub or space. So together with a handful of colleagues, we've helped create that. It's definitely a work in progress, so I'm looking forward to today and sharing. But yeah, wellbeing's just always been something I've been really passionate about. I just care about people and kindness, and connecting people to one another and to support, and I'm lucky I can do that in my day-to-day job now. So yeah.
Perfect. So you've talked a little bit, both of you, about kind of what drew you towards that role, and you obviously both had a passion for it. Do you see that as something that's becoming, you know, much more prevalent in, you know, maybe in the public sector, these roles coming up? Are they things that are being created when people have a passion for it and kind of create a bit of a revolution, or is it more of a, you're seeing kind of job descriptions going out for these sorts of roles? What would you say?
There was an established wellbeing team at Surrey, but COVID just expanded it. So I think there was two people in post initially, and now we've got 5 of us that cover employee experience, employee wellbeing, and ED&I. So we've all got JDs, and there is a focus on wellbeing. But yeah, I think COVID just sort of expanded it for us. But I think it probably would have gone that way anyway, because we've got sort of 11,000 staff. And so our team is really small to support everyone and all the uniqueness of frontline staff, people out and about all day, people working at home. There's a lot of complexities, I think, with local government and how you can support everyone and how tailored each service requirement is. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a big agenda item for local government. I know a few people that have said wellbeing is something they want to be considering in the next 12 months.
Yeah. How about yourself, Steffi?
Yeah, I think COVID, during the early days of the pandemic, the words well-being and kindness were being heard and felt much more often. So just before the pandemic entered our lives, a group of us were supported and started to do some initiatives, and we literally just delivered a health and wellbeing survey for colleagues where we gathered wants, needs and ideas. So we were just starting with that kind of work, and it was being done by just a group of passionate people. But I think the pandemic just brought it really to the forefront as a necessity. So as a council, we were doing what we could to support our community in any way we could, but we were doing that while managing isolation ourselves, childcare issues ourselves, our mental health conditions in this different world. And so I think it just became more of a necessity and less of a tick box or nice to have. And I think what happened quite quickly was we connected with people that were also so passionate, and we created a formal working group, or a more formal working group, I should say, a staff wellbeing and inclusion group, because people just needed help and they needed support, they needed connection. So our main aims were to connect people to other people, to support and in some ways to ourselves as well a bit more during the time, because we were all going through so much. So I think at our council it just kind of brought the conversation up the agenda as such, and yeah, across the council we found so many people that cared about one another and the community. So yeah, we just kind of started to make things happen, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, if there's one silver lining to be taken from a pandemic, then it's that at least it's kind of brought this sort of thing up the agenda and the impact that it has on people. I find it really interesting, Liz, you mentioned as well about the autonomy that you operate with. And I guess kind of linked to that, there's a question around, I've always wondered about this question. So this is probably quite a big one early on in the conversation, but if you're trying to create I assume both of you, you want to create a culture of this stuff, right? You don't just want to do kind of one-off activities. So if you're trying to create that, does it need to come, do you think, from the top down? Or can it be like a revolution that started from the bottom up? And if more and more people get on board with it, then it just becomes part of how the organization works. So there's probably, Are they questions? There's a few things in there, but have you got any thoughts on that in terms of how you start these things up, or and the links to the autonomy that you have and that side of things?
I was interested to hear from Liz, and the roles and stuff. Here it's been more of a movement. So we're a group of passionate. When I started, I just found these people across the organisation who were doing like charity events or cake sales or sharing material. And we came together in this virtual Microsoft Teams channel. And from there, it's just grown. And you find more colleagues and more people with expertise and experiences. And then, people started sharing their own mental health experiences and well-being, thoughts and feelings and wants and needs. It just kind of grew quite naturally into a movement. So we're at the point now where we're considering, it being more a part of, roles and things. But ultimately, it was just this movement, this group, and it's just naturally happened, which is just amazing, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, Liz, was that the same for you, or a bit different?
No, it was quite different. I think from Surrey, mental health and wellbeing is definitely a sort of key agenda item and something that's really important. And it always goes back to, I think, our purpose as an organisation is for the service users and the residents, and to look at our service offering and how we can have our staff in the best position to be able to help others. And I think that starts with their own wellbeing. So if we focus on staff wellbeing, we can then ensure that the services they provide are better, they're happier, they have better balance in life. So I think it starts from inside the organisation and then works out and everyone benefits. And then we've also got the mental health initiatives that we're working on with residents through public health and things like that. So I think it's kind of twofold with us. But again, we've got Wellbeing Champions that we're launching on the 21st of June, which is, again, 100 passionate people about wellbeing across all different teams, services, and their mission is just to spread some joy, happiness, wellbeing campaigns. And it doesn't have to be exercise, it's just anything that kind of makes you happy or brings you joy. Sharing those messages, making sure wellbeing is considered in team meetings, and just being quite proactive. So we've kind of got a top down, bottom up, and sort of coming in from the sides from managers. But I really feel we have a wellness culture, which makes my job an absolute dream, and it to be a great place to work, I think, for employees. It's not perfect, of course. There are pockets of staff that are quite hard to reach. They might not be online. They might be quite isolated in their roles. So that we're all sort of redefining what we're doing and evaluating it. But I think it's quite a good work in progress. And yeah, the survey results, I think it was high 80s for how they feel about employee wellbeing and how it's considered. So yeah, I think it's done fairly well.
Yeah, I love that thing you said about kind of using it in team meetings and that sort of thing. Because one of the things I'm always harping on about, and have been for years, Alethea will be bored of this, is the idea that you need to kind of bake well-being in rather than it's the sprinkles on top. Rather than let's do our day job and get the emails done and get the to-do list done. And if there's any time at the end of the week, do a bit of yoga or eat an apple, and that's tick, well-being done. But instead, obviously we want to bake it into every single touch point when people are talking to one another, appraisals, inductions, training, all sorts of opportunities to. So was that something that you did? Again, quite a difficult question, maybe. Was that something that you did kind of strategically? Did you think this is something that we're going to try and create across the whole organization, or did it kind of just build as the grew?
I think it was done quite strategically at Surrey. All the sort of communication channels. So it's always communicated out, got regular updates on wellbeing, what we're up to. So yeah, I think it's fairly strategic with how it's rolled out, and then it's just evolved. So now the services will come to us with their varying needs, and then we'll create sort of bespoke solutions. So it kind of starts as a one size fits all general rollout, and then it gets more tailored and more bespoke depending on the need of the different teams and services.
Got you. And so, sorry, just while I'm still on that, how do you report on that? If you don't mind me asking that, how do you kind of measure it and keep a handle of, or do you need to keep a handle of like what people are doing and whether it's having a desired impact and those sorts of things?
Yeah, so we cover it off in our pulse surveys, just to look at the wellbeing measures. We're going to start adding a couple of questions about the wellbeing champions, just to see if people are aware of them, and just to try and measure the potential impact But yeah, I do think there's challenges on measuring the return and the impact. We're looking at sickness data and sort of EAP take up. And for us, it's a success if we've got high levels of employees using the EAP. You'd see that as a win because they're using the services that are available to them. So through our Wellbeing Champions, that's one of the metrics we're going to look at is EAP uptake, and if that's increased since we've had champions out promoting about it, sort of promoting it and talking about the benefits. But yeah, we're looking at some different sort of platforms as well to measure employee engagement and well-being. There's some quite fun tech out there.
Yeah, no, it sounds cool. Sounds cool. How about you, Steffi, in terms of any of that, the approach and the measurement?
Yeah, so we're just kind of early on in our journey, but we did just before the pandemic did a health and wellbeing survey, and whenever we do any staff, pulse surveys or engagement, we try, we incorporate wellbeing and inclusion into there. We do a range of initiatives and activities. We've got a staff wellbeing inclusion intranet site. We do lunch and learn sessions. We do wellbeing group chat and check-ins. We've got a weekly staff newsletter and monthly report that we do more like an update for staff. So we kind of just keep an eye on who's getting involved, and we're just constantly seeking ideas and thoughts and feelings from colleagues to make sure what we're focusing on matters to them, and connecting them to it. So that helps us ensure it's not just a nice to have, it's actually we're doing things that matter and connecting people and getting people to engage with what we're doing. But like I said, we're still learning and still growing our offer, but we do have an overall plan where we jotted down 100 and odd ideas, and we're just working our way through them. But I think we just learn by carrying on the conversations, creating these safe, supportive spaces for colleagues to share, incorporate them into our work. So yeah, just creating a culture of active listening, I suppose, and of learning, and yeah, just learning as we go along, really.
Yeah, just to add to that, we ran a few workshops and drop-in sessions for staff that could talk about wellbeing, mental health, and the uptake is it's incredible how many people are interested in having these discussions and to provide input. And as Steffi said, it's about understanding the needs of the staff and what they want, and then tailoring. Because you can roll out a ton of things that might not be needed or effective, but if you can understand what they want, what's important to them, and that can have a huge amount of value.
Here's one. So just on that, what's been the biggest surprise initiative that had an impact that you weren't expecting, perhaps? So maybe you kind of put it out there thinking, oh, this won't get much traction, and suddenly you got lots of people engaging with it. Have you got an example of that, or is it all great?
I did a wellbeing photography competition that was really rushed. I thought it would be a complete flop, and I just didn't have any confidence in it at all. Anyway, it kind of went viral internally, and it was take a photo in nature and just share your photos, made it to a competition. But the engagement was crazy. It was so good, and just the pictures were amazing. So again, it was something really, really small. We run these huge initiatives that take weeks of planning. This was sort of 10 minutes, quick, get it out there, and it got huge engagement. That was really surprising.
We did a similar competition actually of nature photographs, and the same thing happened. We got lots. I think the other one from here was just early on in the pandemic. I set up a Microsoft Teams channel. I just called it Lancaster City Council Community Channel, just as a way to stay connected as we started to go from home. And I thought, a few people would join it, and majority of the staff team that have an email are actually in that channel now, and it's where we do virtual awareness days and campaigns, share photos and all sorts. And we've actually grown the channel to have a book club. There's a climate change conversations channel as well, and it started off something so small, and it's just grown as a bit of a staff hub, really, and it's been wonderful for keeping people connected. So yeah, didn't expect that to become quite what it has.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is do a competition around it, right?
Yeah.
Make people compete for their well-being in that way. No, it's dead. Really interesting, that, and the use of technology as well, right, Steffi? And I guess that's going to be something that, I can ask you, do you see the work that you're doing and the interventions that you're doing around well-being changing? They've probably changed a lot over the last 12 months. Do you see that shifting as I don't know what the future looks like, right? Is it a hybrid working? Is it more remote working for people? Do you think that's an impact on the type of interventions that you do? What do
I
you
think so. I think in some ways we've become more connected than ever before, because of what we've got access to virtually. However, as soon as we're able to do more things in person, we'll make that happen. There's nothing better than bringing people together in a space, safe, supportive space. We've started recently doing group walks as colleagues. So we've had our third one yesterday, which we managed to do around 22 kilometers, as a group. And it's just quite powerful, sharing experiences and needs and ideas and just getting to know people. So although it's amazing what we've been able to do quite quickly virtually and build our staff wellbeing inclusion site with hundreds of connections to support, nothing quite beats being in a space with other people. I think it's quite powerful, and I think some people really need that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm quite surprised at what I've been able to achieve fully remote in a job that I've never done before. But yeah, I think you can be effective, but yeah, I do think you need that engagement and face-to-face contact. And when we do our champion launch, we're looking at the different initiatives. And if we were all together, we'd probably have a barbecue or rounders or just a community event that would bring people together. That I think would be really nice. But yeah, I think hybrid's the way forward. I think you can get a lot done, but then you still need to be face-to-face. And some of the training sessions and workshops, I think you do need to run face-to-face. You do need to be there. Hybrid for me.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. And you mentioned the champions a few times, right? So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and how that all works? Is that something new that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's with Robertson Cooper, your
previous employers. Yeah,
that's the wasn't sure the situation. But yeah, no, it's really great. So they've just set out a sort of framework for us to roll out champions across the organisation, just to really keep the messages of wellbeing going, to encourage sort of uptake campaigns, and just have people leading on it really in all different areas of the council. So it feels like we've got an extension of our team by an extra 100 people. There's some really keen, passionate individuals with loads of ideas, and so we've got Team Channel, and we share loads of ideas and things that we've got, and campaigns coming up. And I think it just joins the organisation together, particularly when we are, a lot of us are remote, of what's coming up, what they can get involved with. But yeah, it's launching on the 21st, and I'm really hopeful to have what of the impact that it's going to make across the organisation, just getting wellbeing considered in all ways of working, and just the hard to reach teams and people that might be not engaging with it. We've got all sorts of different people talking about it.
Yeah, and how do you? So this is kind of the same question. So it's how do you recruit for those champions? But I guess also like talking from your own experiences, because we've got a question from Yana on the chat who said about, as a HR professional, what kind of skills do you need to support your colleagues? So she mentions potentially coaching and mentoring, those sorts of skills. So what do you? So like I said, that's kind of two questions in one, but similar. What sort of skills, or is it behaviors you need to, you think, be a success in these sorts of roles?
I think any kind of champion role, I think self-awareness and sort of knowing yourself, your own kind of emotions and where you are with your own well-being, because you need to be able to step back and create boundaries. And that's something that I've always found really challenging. And I think when passion's involved, sometimes it goes out the window and you're just following your heart and doing what you feel is the right thing to do. So I think an element of boundary management and self-awareness, I just think the passion piece is so important, because it's just infectious. And if someone is really engaged in something and getting and telling you about it, you can't help but sort of feel that energy. And I think it just helps with buy-in. But yeah, I don't think the JD for it is complicated. But passion and self-awareness, I think, are really, really important.
Oh, sorry, I was unmuted. Would you add anything to that, Steffi?
Yeah, we've got staff ambassadors here. So, similar, as the wellbeing champions. And I guess our job description for it, or role description, was basically these people that care, want to connect people, are happy to share messages and, be advocates. So yeah, like Liz was saying, it's kind of grown our team as such, and we've managed to connect with people that don't spend a lot of time on emails or don't have access to emails, that kind of thing. And I think the main thing is just being happy to listen, and being kind and authentic, and and creating spaces for people, helping people to have their voices be heard. That's the main reason we started the staff ambassador scheme, is just because we've got staff across different services, in different positions and connected in different ways. So it was just to have a voice for those people, and they're just absolutely amazing. So yeah, just be caring and kind, and be willing to share messages and feedback, and to support people, really. Yeah.
Cool. So it all sounds really positive so far. So where's the bad stuff? What's the hard bit? where are the challenges? I mean, you mentioned difficult to reach certain populations. That's obviously a challenge that's come up a couple of times. Is there anything else that you'd add to that list, or how you've overcome the challenge of accessing some of those more isolated individuals?
I think there can be an element of reluctance and skepticism with things like this. And you're always going to have an element of the workforce that aren't up for it, aren't engaged. And it's just understanding how to manage those people and accept that there will be people that aren't interested at all. And that's absolutely fine. I think it's up to the individual if they want to engage with these things. And I think that was, because I'm quite keen, I sort of come in with this height of optimism. Yes, everything's going to be great and everyone's going to love it. And it's not for everyone. And everyone isn't as passionate as me, or the rest of the team. But yeah, that was a little bit of a learning curve. But I think just with moving into a new role anyway, there's always some things that you expect it to be a certain way. Yeah. And it's not. Yeah, completely acceptable and understandable.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that about, some people just won't engage with it. I have wondered in the past, like, whether we should make some of this mandatory. I don't know. And you've surely seen the launch of the new ISO standard around mental health and wellbeing as well. That's due this month, isn't it? And I wonder whether that'll bring with it a bit more of, maybe not making it mandatory, but a bit more of like, this is part of your job now to look after your mental health in the same way that you need to attend the thing that shows you how to work from heights, or wear a harness properly if you're doing a dangerous job, and people get stressed at work, so they should invest in their own mental health and well-being. But it's a difficult line with that one, isn't it? Because you don't want to stress people out about not being stressed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I was just going to add as well, some of these people might not engage with it, but when we've approached these people that have maybe declined an appointment or said they're not interested in getting involved, sometimes you'll get an answer just saying, oh, it's just, I'm happy to know you're there when we do need you. So sometimes, it's just because right now they may feel, mentally healthy and not need support, or feel it's not for them at the time, but them being aware of it and them sharing their awareness with other people in their spaces can be quite helpful to us. But I completely understand what Liz was saying about being passionate and enthusiastic and positive, and some people going, oh no, it's Steffi, one of the things again, or Steffi's posted again, but as long as people know, we genuinely care, we're genuinely authentic, we do care about people, we're not just here to work, we're human beings as well. So just them being aware that we're delivering these initiatives and sharing these support connections, there's something rewarding in that as well, I think.
Yeah. And without sounding too much like Simon Sinek or something like that, it's as you mentioned before, Liz, it's like linking it back to why you're doing it, right? Not just here's a load of initiatives that you can engage with. It's like, this is why we're doing it, and because you mentioned it'll help people do their jobs to more effective level, keep them in the right space. It'll have an impact on your customers, your clients, the public that you serve, all those sorts of things as well. So that hopefully will draw people towards these sorts of initiatives as well. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
Thanks, guys. It's so fascinating hearing, these insights. I think it's what we need to hear, like what's really going on and what's the appetite. And I mean, I echo what Matt said. Everything sounds, so I'm sure it comes with its challenges in the scope of the job, but everything sounds really, really positive. And cheery about the initiatives that you've got going on, which is really nice, because I do think it is a big challenge. So to come at it with really sort of positive mindset is an optimistic mindset is really important, and also challenging in itself, isn't it? As a person representing well-being, I know I certainly find that as a yoga teacher, to kind of show up with a spring in your step and a smile on your face, that can be hard for you guys and for the people in those champion and advocate roles, because we don't necessarily all have a brilliant day every day. So well done, guys, really amazing. So just, I know you've talked about your champion programs, your advocate programs, but like in this very moment, what stuff have you got going on? We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I want to hear about your burpees, Steffi.
Yes, I saw that, Steffi. How's it going?
So I mentioned how we're doing the group walks and things at the moment. But one of the things I've managed to rope colleagues into is some charity things. So 2,000 burpees in June. I've managed to get 11 colleagues to do that with me. So that's fun, fun sometimes. So we're at kind of at the space here where we're just seeking colleagues' thoughts and feelings on our future ways of working. So we're kind of doing a regroup at the moment here of what's important and what colleagues want and need from us. So just continuing to check in and create safe spaces to share. Most recently, we've had the Samaritans come in and actually join us to deliver some training on how to listen, which was very well received. Just growing on things really at the moment. All around the burpees, Liz. So yeah.
Love that. Charities are such a nice way, health charities are such a nice way for sort of helping to create structure with initiatives, aren't they? I think it's a really kind of useful tool for finding programs that already exist and being able to kind of use them to help create a bit of structure and activity, whether it's kind of an awareness month or a burpees challenge. It's always a good kind of go-to to see what the charities that are relevant to your organisation and what you do, and see what things they have going on, because it can be quite a handy tool. What about you, Liz? What's on the current immediate agenda for wellbeing activity? No burpees.
No, I won't be putting that forward as an idea. So one of our next big events is on the 30th of June, where we formed the Surrey Workplace Wellbeing Collaborative, which is a collaboration between us and mental health charities and organisations to just provide education and support for local businesses. So we're doing a couple of initiatives, one with local schools, so we support them with wellbeing, looking at redefining that offering, what that looks like with mental health first aider support and training, wellbeing conversations, stress assessments, all the sort of standard support that we can offer schools. So we've got the local businesses support as well. We've trained, I think about 17 mental health first aiders now, and we've just trained 15 trainers. So that's going to be in-house. And I think for us, it's about not necessarily vanity numbers of mental health first aiders, but just how can we make sure as many of the organisations possible can go on this training. They might not become a mental health first aider, but at least they've been on the training and they understand it. So that's something we're working on. We've signed up to become a mindful employer. So it's a charter that just encourages positive mental health across the organisation. We've got a steering group, so people outside of our wellbeing team that can just share ideas and opinions and sort of feedback on what the needs are. And we're looking at local government charter with other local authorities. So that's something that's kind of in the pipeline, and also reviewing our mental health policies. Reviewing all our policies to see the impact on mental health. Lots of other projects and big.
Let's go. Do you feel, obviously we've got both of you guys here today sort of representing local councils, but do you feel that there is good sharing amongst the community between councils and county councils around your wellbeing activities and practices?
I think I've been lucky to connect with a couple of contacts at different councils. So their experience, like I said, I've only worked in a council for 2.5 years, and it's very, very different. So it's seeking those connections for me at the moment. But everyone's so willing to share resources, and not just councils, universities, colleges, local charities. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without them. And we're very, early on in our journey. So I love listening to Liz and everything she's doing. So I can, definitely connect with Liz more about that. But I think you find connections from attending conferences or local events. You find these people, these well-being people, and that's part of the learning and the experience and the success of this stuff, is finding your people, finding those connections. And because we're not in competition with each other, we all just want to help people live happy and healthier lives. So when you find those connections, it's like, yes, you're one of my people. And yeah, so it's just really supportive. But that's something I do want to do more of myself, actually. And following your conference, I made a couple of connections which have been very, very helpful. So the more we can grow that, hopefully the more work we can all do to help support people, really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's where we're at, isn't it, Matt? We just want the sharing is so important. So glad to hear that.
I think there's a nice community, and there's always some councils that are more advanced than others, and fundamentally we all face similar challenges, and so we're all going to go on the same journey. So I think it's really important that we do share. I've connected with possibly my equivalent in Essex, and shared a couple of messages. I think what they're doing as an organisation is incredible, and I've looked at some of their documents. But yeah, as Sophie said, it's not about competition. It's looking at who's sort of modelling great things and what can we learn from them, and how can they help us be better. And I think the appetite is there to be supportive and collaborative. And I think that's the real difference with sort of public sector and private sector organisations. I've been, majority of my career has been recruitment within the private sector, which is hugely aggressive and so competitive. To be in this world of niceness and different people, it's a dream.
Oh, that's good.
And it's the same ethos, right? It's because weirdly, the more even private sector organizations and multinationals and whatnot get on board with well-being, that will undoubtedly drive innovation, right? Because competition and money and all the rest of it does. But I do think that it's a bit different with well-being. I think the initiative you've mentioned, it's all about how people come together. It's those relationships, those connections, it's the kindness, it's the sharing. And if you're using that sort of ethos to network with other like-minded individuals in different councils, and I think that's definitely the way forward, especially with everything that's been going on recently.
Yeah.
I also think with councils as well, we're so good at taking care of other people, the community. It's sometimes easy just to carry on doing the work and not take care of ourselves. So if we're at least reminding each other across councils and across teams and things to take care of ourselves first, it's that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so yeah, that support is just so invaluable.
Yeah, I was going to ask that actually. Maybe the final question, unless Alethi's got another one. But was around how you look after yourselves. Get a bit more personal, because there must be points where you're like, oh, this is quite hard. And so how do you motivate yourself? How do you keep yourself going and all that side of things? Look after your own well-being.
Liz, do you want to go first?
Well, I've come across a new thing, which is well-being guilt, which is where you should be doing X, Y, and Z, but you're not because you're too busy and you're too stressed, and everything just goes out the window. So that's quite a new phenomenon that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, I think it just constantly is at the forefront of your mind that this is what you do and you need to look after yourself. I have a wellbeing budget for myself, which is probably about £200 a month. It covers sort of therapy, acupuncture, reflexology, loads of things. I have ADHD, quite bad anxiety, and sort of varying levels of depression at the time, and I'm not medicated, so I have to manage it through lifestyle choices. So for me, it's something that I have to do, but it doesn't make it any easier. I do struggle now and then, but yeah, I just try and role model where possible.
Yeah, no, I could definitely empathise with the wellbeing guilt. I run wellbeing and resilience sessions, and I have definitely run sessions where I'm telling everyone to look after their well-being as I feel like my eyes are pinned open and I'm like trying to stay awake, and then you feel guilty about that. But yeah, it happens. Steffi, how about yourself?
Yeah, same. I give all the advice, but sometimes I have to remind myself to take it. I'm very lucky to have a wonderful group of friends and colleagues that remind me, to do what I'm telling everyone else to do. And the reason I'm so passionate about wellbeing is from personal experience and from those around me. So those that know me, how I do suffer from anxiety, and I've had various other mental health issues in the past, and I've had to find my way around self-care and support, and seeking support and welcoming support. So when I'm speaking to colleagues, that's where it all comes from. So and I think that's why we take a more holistic approach to well-being as well. So, the fitness, the mental, the emotional, the psychological safety, it all truly matters. So for me, I love yoga, I love walking, healthy eating, exercise. And so when I'm speaking about this stuff, it comes from experience and genuine passion and, authenticity. And I'm lucky to have met lots of people who understand that. So yeah, definitely all about self-care and preaching the self-care.
I think having that honesty is so important in the roles that you have, though, because we have to hold our hands up, don't we, and say that it isn't like this isn't the well-being journey like this, just constantly going up. It is up and down. And that's why we also have to have sympathy when we're kind of trying to engage our communities, our workforces, that, there are phases and ebbs and flows and seasonal influences and various different things that each of us really, as individuals, are on different journeys. Because of our personal life journeys that are happening alongside work. So it's making that okay. And it does start with these honest and open stories from the people that are leading us. So thank you,
Do you
guys.
find this work energizing though, which I've never experienced before? I've never finished a full day feeling ready to do something else. And that's what I take from my work at the minute, which is remarkable.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. That's amazing.
Maybe I'm not working hard enough.
I'm sure you're working hard enough.
Yeah.
The other one's just helping individuals, isn't it? Because you can talk all day long about strategic interventions and long-term cultural change, but like when one person says on a course I'm running or says to you like that made a real difference, it's like that really fuels you, doesn't it, in a way?
Yeah, it's almost a bit of
the metrics tick up doesn't necessarily, although I do love data, so maybe that doesn't help.
It's almost a bit of a catch-22 for me, that one, Matt, because of course the objective is engagement and helping as many people as possible, but then as you say, you get this one person saying, oh my goodness, that's changed my week, and you're like, okay, right, well, that's enough. So it's the balance of the two, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I think we time-wise need to wrap up. So of course, if there's any questions for anyone that's live with us, then do let us know. Otherwise, we'll be sharing this recording. And I'm sure that Steffi and Liz would be happy to hear any further questions or hear from anyone who would like to connect. You'll be able to find both of them on LinkedIn. From Matt and I, we're going to be sharing some news soon about what next month's wellbeing, Talking Wellbeing talk is going to be all about. But we do hope to each month guide you through some useful conversations and insights and inspiration, as we've had from Liz and Steffi today. Also, just to remind you that the recordings from the Working Well virtual conference are still available. If anyone missed that or would like to catch up, then we do have those and we're happy to share. So I think that's everything from me. Matt, you're good?
Yeah, all good. Just thank you so much, Steffi and Liz. I really appreciate it. And it's motivated me. I might go for a run, maybe. Look after
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to do some burpees.
Some burpees, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Cool.
Thank you.
Have a nice rest of your day, everyone.
See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.